विश्व में हमने युवाओं की आईटी एनर्जी के माध्यम से अपना रुतबा खड़ा किया है और भारत इसके बाद के लिए गर्व कर सकता है। दुनिया में हम आंख में आंख मिला करके बात कर सकते हैं। और ये मेरा साथ मैं हमेशा कहता आया हूँ, आईटी प्लस आईटी इज इक्वल टू आईटी। इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी प्लस इंडियन टैलेंट इज इक्वल टू इंडिया टुमारो।
Namaskar and good afternoon to all. I am Vikram Singh Bisht. I welcome you all on behalf of Elets Technomedia. Previously on this day, we have a wonderful opening session on IT applications and its implications on healthcare sector. We have a very insightful presentation by Rohit Jha, who was from Ayushman Bharat, PMJAY. Now, moving on to our next panel discussion, which is on behavioral health infrastructure. On this panel, the experts will come together to discuss why should behavioral health be central to public health policy making. They will also discuss the need for planning and developing behavioral health infrastructure in India. For this, I am very pleased to welcome Wing Commander Manoj Kumar Bose, Director Projects from Malla Reddy Hospitals, Dr. Mervyn Leo, Head Emergency Department from Dr. Mehta's Hospital. He is also moderating the session. Welcome, sir. And Dr. Nagesh K. Rao, Group Chief Operating Officer and Group Head Improvement Sciences from Omni Hospitals. We are very pleased to welcome them all. Over to you, Dr. Mervyn.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. This is Dr. Mervyn Leo, heading the emergency services currently with Dr. Mehta's Hospital, Chennai, and formerly was the cluster head of Global Hospitals, Hyderabad. So happy to welcome the panelists, Dr. K. Nageshwar Rao, and who currently heads Omni Hospitals as Chief Operating Officer and Group Head Improvement Services. And happy to welcome Mr. Manoj Kumar, Director Projects, Malla Reddy Hospitals as well. So today, as Vikram, thank you Vikram, and I thank ELs for giving this opportunity as a moderator and such esteemed panelist for this topic on behavioral health infrastructure. So I did some research on behavioral health infrastructure. It's a new topic for the upcoming and growing India. And as we are densely populated, the behavioral health has a huge impact on business and hospital as well as on today's population. Because we had a COVID surge recently, and the behavior pattern of a lot of people changed. We have to go to the new normal. People lost jobs. Stress management and anger management was a part of a curriculum in hospitals because a lot of patients surged into the hospital where we had to manage a lot of stress of doctors, nurses, paramedical, housekeeping, and allied services. And anger management became a day-to-day routine where we had to manage anger because we had a lot of continuous shifts day in and day out, and night the shifts became a little more from 6 hours to 8 hours, and from 8 hours to 12 hours during the night. And we had to manage their anger by power breaks, giving them some enlightenment on what's happening around, and give extra hands to help them to take care of the patients. So putting patients front, and having an infrastructure around it is very key, because we have lot million more population, and for behavioral health we have to have infrastructure, and which needs to be strongly addressed. So I'll just share one small story, and we can go ahead with introduction of the team, and then we can go in with the topic. So in Tamil Nadu we had one CM, Mr. Kamaraj, who had to visit one of the nearby village. So when he was visiting the village, he had to cross a railway track, where the railway track always asks us to stay for 5 to 10 minutes for the railway crossing. So he saw two young little sellers, roadside sellers, who are at an age of 8 to 6 years old. So they were selling flowers, and Kamaraj stopped by and asked, "What are you doing? Why are you selling flowers?" These small kids came back to him and said, he asked, "Who are you?" Then Kamaraj had to explain that he is the chief minister of Tamil Nadu. So the secretary started scolding the kids. Then Kamaraj told that, "No, no, don't scold them. It's our fault not visiting them, and they don't know about us. It's our fault and not theirs." And he asked one question to them: "Why are you not going to school?" Then they said that, "No, we have to earn for the family, and schooling is a remote thing for us, and we will not get a midday meal if we leave this job." So then this thought provoked him, and he had to initiate a lot of schools and start this midday meal program. If there's a midday meal, then children used to come to school and have the midday meal and get educated. So this one aspect which conquered a lot of people here in Tamil Nadu, and this really changed the behavior of the teenage groups, and they were asked to come to school for a midday meal. At least then after next CM came, and they introduced a protein rich diet, adding an egg to the meal and a lot of varieties of meals. But why I would like to share this information is that this one thought provoked a lot. Many schools were opened in Tamil Nadu. All villages were having schools. Today whichever school was open in Tamil Nadu was by Kamaraj. So this led to a behavioral change of the entire village, and the entire village started getting education at the time. And now education has become compulsory for 14 to 6 up to 16 years now. So this thought helped the entire village to change the behavior. So moving on to our panelists, I would like to hear from Dr. Nagesh Rao to introduce himself. Then we can move to Mr. Manoj Kumar to introduce himself, and then we can go on to the topic. Over to you, Dr. Nagesh. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Dr. Mervin, and thanks to Elets for giving this opportunity to talk about behavioral health infrastructure as on today in the country. Myself, I'm Dr. Nagesh. I also come from the similar background like Dr. Mervin with an emergency medicine. But currently in the operations role, I am a group chief operating officer for the group called Omni Hospitals. I also head the quality census of the group, and I also work for NABH as a consultant assessor and NQUAS as a consultant assessor. And it's a privilege for me to be part of this platform along with the Wing Commander MK Bose and Dr. Mervyn Leo, and looking forward for the fruitful discussion, probably some good insights for me as well. Thanks a lot.
Over to you, Mr. Manoj Kumar.
Good afternoon, Dr. Mervyn and Dr. Nagesh, and thanks to Elets for having invited and given me the opportunity to talk to all of you. I'm presently the director of Mallareddy Hospital and the projects of the Mallareddy Group. And I've been here for the last 5.5 years. Earlier to this, I was the chief operating officer for Mallareddy Narayana. And before that, I was with Apollo LV Prasad. Prior to joining the Indian, joining the civil, I was in the Indian Air Force for 22 years. I'm presently heading all the projects as well as overseeing all the operations of the Malaredi group of hospitals here in Hyderabad. And behavioral health has been one of the prime subject of late, especially after the endemic has set in. And it will be a good subject to discuss and have our views on it. Thank you very much.
So fantastic. So thanks, thank you, panelists, for accepting our invite and coming on board. So let me talk to Dr. Nagesh about how to develop the knowledge and skills around behavioral health in health infrastructure. Why? Because there's a lot of opportunities for job performance and productivity, engagement with a person's work, communication with co-workers, physical capacity for day-to-day functionality. There's a very thin line between behavioral health and mental health. Behavioral health is a very vast topic, and out of which mental health is one of them. So substance use, a lot of patients we are getting, the alignment of marriage, a lot of counseling, suicidal thoughts, and a lot of examinations, pressure, peer pressure, as well as industry, the company pressure. So a lot of things can happen, these days. And even education has become a pressure post NEET, and we see a lot of suicide post exams, and a lot of things are coming up these days. And children who are using these days mobile phone. Lucky we were into a generation where we didn't use a lot of mobiles during our childhood, and we were let to play outside. But now, due to pandemic and other stuff, we are only using online platforms and online games and online portals for children as well. So over to you for knowledge and skill development in an hospital
Thanks,
environment.
Dr. Naveen. You very rightly mentioned about the behavioral health includes lots of, the gamut itself is a very big gamut to cover. And when we talk about knowledge and skills confined to a particular segment of skill. When we talk about skill, it can be confined to a particular segment of professionals who are the frontliners of assessing or treating this kind of people who are actually affected, and the other kind of the other segment that we are talking is knowledge. I think today the major portion of the population whom we refer to doesn't even know what is a behavioral health is about. And a lot of people do think behavioral health is just a mental health and it's just a psychiatry, and anything to do with psychiatry, there is lots of stigma around it in the community. So many of the community stakeholders do not take a major role in educating the communities as well as bringing the awareness in the public. Thanks to Government of India and especially National Health Rural Mission, which I think Wing Commander is going to cover the policies part of this what we discussed. The Indian government have actually started doing focusing on the mental health, but not as a behavioral health as such. But behavioral health as such, I think it's a role and responsibility of every citizen who can actually bring awareness in his own communities, in his own family. There are families where people are not okay behavior wise, but they still think they're quite okay, and then they just get along. They don't know where they are heading to. Now this knowledge part of behavioral health needs to it needs to be propelled at a very high fast rate into the communities, so that people get to know what is the behavioral health, how is it going to affect their physiological or psychological ways of living. Now there are several tools, I would say, when it comes to assessing a behavioral therapy of an individual. Now, these tools per se probably will be used by people on the front line who are most concerned about dealing with behavioral health abnormalities. Now, if you take healthcare workers, we have different segments of healthcare workers. We have paramedics, we have medics, and now in paramedics you have nurses, you have technicians, and medics you have doctors, the entire bunch of doctors who work for it. Now, as a part and parcel of our medical education, we also learn how to assess someone who comes to you for some disease element. So it is the mental health assessment is a part and parcel of our regular treatment, I would say. But now behavioral health assessment is something which is missing as on today, even in when it comes to a general assessment or an overall assessment of an individual, unless until the psychiatrist identifies him and then tells him, you have some sort of a behavioral abnormality pattern which needs further assessment. Now, post pandemic, there's lots and lots of stress which has mounted because of the financial aspects or job loss, or people are just, they never used to live in these four walls, and then they're now locked inside the home. They don't know what to do. So there are lots and lots of factors which have actually affected the behavioral health in the pandemic. It's not just a corona novel corona infection that we keep talking about. I think there's a lot of behavioral pattern which have actually changed in the last 1 year or so, ever since we've been suffering with this pandemic. Now, skills, I think someone have to take the responsibility of training, educating, and then make people use those skills in identifying the behavioral pattern abnormalities and then correct them. Now, are we do we really on the verge of getting this done? I would say we still lack a lot of things, especially if you talk about the preparedness of hospitals, or preparedness of clinics, or preparedness of any healthcare providing, healthcare organizations per se. We are not really prepared so to address the behavioral health abnormalities or abnormal patterns, because it has never been recognized as an important and critical element which can also affect individuals' outcome in various diseases. Now, the skill development and the knowledge should go hand in hand. Now, there are several stakeholders who should actually take part in propaganda, doing the propaganda about this behavioral health and its outcomes, if it is handled well on right time. And the skill development should also happen parallelly along with distributing the knowledge to the communities. Now, recently, let me just bring something interesting here. Recently, there was a small module of mental health for 3 to 4 months for the community practitioners, which was brought out by Central Institute of Ranchi. It was an online kind of a training. It was an online skill development program. Now, it was beautifully modeled in such a way that you as a general practitioner, you'll understand what kind of behavioral abnormalities that we see in the community, and how to recognize them, how to diagnose them, and how to address them. It is not just about writing a prescription or a medicine, but perhaps I think identifying this behavioral abnormality is a very difficult. I would say it's a different kind of a protocol that we need to take into. And the moment if you come across these behavioral abnormalities by virtue of your training or whatever guidance that you have, I think that is gonna take the individual out of this abnormal pattern what he's been going through without even getting recognized by his own people, or even to that matter the medical professionals. So if that is addressed, I'm pretty sure this is going to add a lot of value for various diseases outcomes, and also to the individuals to handle at their level and cope up with whatever stress that they are into. And these are all uncertain times which have been brought in by this pandemic. I think as an individual and at the community level, at the national level, the knowledge and the skill development to handle behavioral abnormalities should become a prime, and should be taken up at a high priority. And we as an individual at every level should try to give some sort of awareness about behavioral abnormalities with community, so that they come out and then they get addressed.
Yeah, good to know. So, breaking down, managed behavioral health is the priority. So, how do we manage is one of the key. And mental health, as Dr. Nagesh rightly said, that mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own capabilities, can cope up with normal stress of life, and can work productively and make an able contribution in the community. So this is the definition for mental health, and this is the key where we can contribute to the community. And mental health is just one of the area of behavioral health, as Dr. Nagesh said, and I also quoted in the previous communication. So behavioral health, we have to focus more on habits, which are affecting the overall health, as well as the mental desires, as well as which can help the mental well-being of the person. So over to you, Dr. Mr. Manoj Kumar, for the policies and procedure. How can we have policies in place and procedures to build a behavioral health infrastructure? Over to you, Mr. Manoj Kumar. Vikram, is there a problem with the connectivity? I think so. He's out of thing. So let him come back. So, but what we here are talking is about, say, employers have needs to improve the quality and needs to have some basic fund allocated to their staff for their mental health well-being. So employees are definitely looking at a greater mental health in coming up days, and they need counseling. And in US, they have started one program where the reporting manager can be allocated about 5 to 10 minutes of their time, and they can share their emotions. It can be anger, it could be stress, it could, but not physically, but orally they can express their views about their the work which is being granted to them, and if there are any itches or anything they have against the supervisor, so that they can solve it. It will not be recorded, but it is an individual to individual conversation where which can be happening in the workplace, where emotions can be shared. So coming back to Mr. Manoj Kumar, where we can share the policies and procedures, what implicates the best from your angle.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mervin. Nice to hear from both of you. And as we speaking about the behavioral health, which encompasses the mental health as well, and behavioral health, as we all know, is nothing but the physical well-being as well as your mental state, and how your behavior impacts your and how your habits impact your behavior, and the surroundings and the environment makes a lot of difference. And before I start on the topic of what all has been done or is going on in this country of ours, it is very essential to understand that the behavioral change communication that we are all are talking about, it's a very long drawn process. It does not happen overnight. Myself, having worked intensively into the community while I was working for leprosy and TB, we have seen that the mental upbringing of an individual is impacted through the environment that he or she lives in. That's the first thing. And to change that particular mindset, it takes a lot of effort. And as I said, behavior change communication is a long drawn process. And there are the environment in which you grow up, the environment that you oversee on a day to day basis makes a lot of impact on your behavioral health. It could affect your depression, it could affect your schizophrenia. You can develop schizophrenia, you can develop depression, you can suicidal tendencies also come up. And these all happens as the environment around you is impacting you from time to time. We have seen people we have seen people getting into an aggressive mode there. As you said in the beginning itself, anger management, that also happens as and when you see the people around you. If you have grown up in a very violent atmosphere, this also affects a lot. And all of this depends on how you change an individual by changing the environment, by giving him or her the kind of environment around you, or if you have a problem, how it is dealt. Now, the government of India, started off with a mental health program way back in the year 1982. Now, when they started off with this, they realized that the behavioral health is, overseeing the mental health, and the mental health is very important to be controlled, to be treated, to be nurtured, so that the behavioral health changes in a significant way from time to time. Now, the mental health program, which was started way back in 1982 in 4 districts of our country, took about 16 or 14 years to go into a national mode of a district mental health program into 23 other districts. From there on, it changed to 117 districts in the year 2003. This is how the district mental health program was. The idea is to extend it to about 107 districts and then slowly go ahead and cover the entire country as well. Now, what is this National Mental Health Program? The National Mental Health Program is nothing but to ensure that any individual who is having a problem with his mental upbringing, or there is some issue about his mental health, can be taken care of at the district level. Reduce the stress, give him or her the proper treatment, ensure that the district level hospitals, where is encompassing all of these mental health treatments, there is an increase of awareness through an IEC program, that is Information, Education and Communication Program. The individuals are trained, that is the health workers are trained into treating such kind of a people. They have a knowledge about how to communicate with such kind of people, and ensure that as and when they come, they are treated at the district level hospital. They need not go directly to a mental health hospital. So this was the basic program that was started off in the way back in 1982. I'm sorry to say that there is a lot of money that is being allotted and allocated to different areas to ensure that the national mental health program takes a big, upsurge, so that all the people across the country, irrespective of the caste, creed, or the socioeconomic conditions that they come from, is treated. Because mental health has got nothing to do with the socioeconomic conditions. So anybody coming in, you need not go. And it was covered under the umbrella of the national policies. So this national mental health program was directly controlled by the central as well as the state, at the district hospitals, at the small little hospitals, the area hospitals, the PHCs, so that these people can be taken care of, anybody who comes and reports there. So a lot of money has been given. Even the medical colleges have been given money so that they can develop their psychiatric ward, and these people get trained. There are 30 beds minimum allotted in each of these medical colleges. A lot of money has been given across to the area hospitals in crores. I will not go into the figures, but I'm just going to tell you that a lot of money has been allotted for these area hospitals and PHCs for them to develop. Money has been given across to the medical colleges for them to develop into the psychiatric wards, and they are trained. But unfortunately, nothing has come out in the open, and this has been discussed in even the budget allocation, for that matter. In our budget allocation, if you see, 50 crores was earlier allotted for the national mental health programs. But unfortunately, as we see and as we know very well, that why our health sector has always taken a back seat, that only the government can answer. The 50 crores was also brought down to 40 crores in the year 2019 and 20. So unless and until the government sets up a priority in the health sector and across the health sector into the behavioral health and the mental health, things are not going to take much of a change. Fortunately, again, the national health policy, which came up in the year 2014, also understood that there is a requirement across the country, especially after the pandemic had happened in the last 2 years, wherein the mental health of the individuals in our country has gone up from 7.5% across to 20%. So every 7 individuals in our country has some kind of a mental issue. which may reflect in their behavior, which may not reflect in their behavior. And that is for every individual, every family member to understand that unless and until we treat these people, unless and until we understand and appreciate what the individual is going through and why are they going through, we should not we should ensure that they get treated. We should not treat this as a stigmatized kind of a disease. It's not a disease. It's just, unfortunately, again, if I am going back to say that the act which came up, the National Mental Health Act which came up in 2017, has seen a big swing and a big change for the betterment, which was earlier instituted in the year 1984, where mental illness was considered as a mental disorder. So in the 1987, the 2017 National Mental Health Act, which was instituted and it was implemented and commissioned in the year 2018, has seen and has been enacted in a big change. Especially the one thing which I'll point out is the suicide. Earlier, the suicide was a criminal act, was considered as a criminal act. But suicide is no more considered as a criminal act. It is now decriminalized and it is considered as a mental illness. And it is considered that a person who is attempting to commit suicide has got some kind of a mental depression or a mental pressure. And it should be the responsibility of the government and the society around you to treat that individual, understand why this person has tried to commit suicide, and make those changes by giving him or her the proper treatment. That was one of the major changes that happened in the National Mental Health Act of 2017. Subsequent to that, there have been other changes like no minor can be given any kind of a harsh treatment. The kind of an electric shocks that were given earlier, that has been debarred. The electric shocks can be given to an individual that is a grown-up person only under the the muscle relaxation and the anesthesia effect. So there have been changes. There have been changes in the suicidal theory. The earlier the Indian Penal Code, which was considering this as a criminal act, has been decriminalized under the act of the National Mental Health Act of 2017 under the section of 115. So there have becoming changes, but unfortunately, when we see an overlap and when we see across this mental health program, the mental health policy, which came up in 2014, the Mental Health Act, which was instituted in 2017, has not been implemented at the grassroots level. Just having the acts or just having the policy will not help. What is very essential and very important for us to understand that the awareness has to be generated across the mass for them to understand what is a behavioral change. Why has this behavioral change understood? And the family members should equally become a participant of this behavioral change. I'm just digressing to say that when I was working in one of the NGO organizations, we had constituted a survey in the schools to understand why does a child not study. So it was seen in schools, and we all know, if a teacher asks a student some question and the student cannot answer, the student is immediately sent to the back bench and considered as a bad student. But when we carried out a study in the area of Odisha, of the Junagadh area and the Kalahandi district of Odisha, we realized that it was nothing to do with that the student is not studying. It was basically that the student is not able to see the blackboard. He had or she had poor vision. Now the teacher was not appreciative of that fact that why is the student not studying? Why is the student not answering? He or she just understood that this student is a bad student and was sent to the back bench. So when we carried out this baseline study in Odisha, we realized that the 3,000 kids, I'm saying, 3,000 children were, unnecessarily considered as into the blindness zone. If we could just give them simple treatment of refractive errors, give them specs, they would come back into the mainstream of society. So behavioral acts, behavioral policy, behavioral change programs can be only constituted and instituted programmatically and successfully only when we create awareness, only when we ensure what is there in the act is implemented in letter and spirit, and every single penny that the government is allotting for these programs are successfully implemented in the way it has been enacted or it has been drafted into these acts and policies. So that is my submission. that behavioral health has to be understood in terms of many things. Why the person undergoes a depression? Is it the environment around you? There should be healthcare workers trained to speak to the individual and understand what is the kind of a mental upbringing that this individual has. So, as I said, behavioral change communication is not a short-term process; it's a long-term process. And people should be trained. Even in the Mental Health Act of 2017, if you see, there is no psychoanalyst, there is no psychotherapist in the entire act. Who is considered as a specialist? A person with an Unani degree or a homeopathic degree or a what do you call Ayurvedic degree. Where is the psychopathist? Where is the psychotherapist? Where is the psychoanalyst? These are the people who should be brought into the mainstream, who should be allotted and allowed to participate into these community programs and understand in community who are the people who are undergoing these kind of sectors. The pandemic has given us a big, in India, we have, even the children, 30% of our children are considered to have behavioral health problems. But do we understand those behavioral health problems? No. So the children carry on this, having these behavioral deficiencies and these things, and grow up into the society because nobody understands and appreciates. A mother beats up the child thinking that this child is a naughty child, not understanding there is something behavioral disorder. So unless and until we go around and create awareness, we talk to individuals, make them understand, we will not succeed. That is my submission.
Great, good insights on the projects and policies. So, first of all, we need to understand why this behavioral change happens in children, then move on to youth, then move on to families, then move on to geriatrics. So, geriatrics as such, people who are in a vegetative state, paralyzed, the mobility is very, very tough for them, and we should understand. See, I can go out have a cup of coffee and chat with friends and come back home, relax or watch a movie. But these people who are not able to speak, who are in a vegetative state, who are paralyzed for long, have so much of depression and so much of and the caretakers, especially if the husband is paralyzed and bedridden, the wife is forced to take care of this paralyzed person, and what sort of depression they are into, and they have to face the society. And women especially have periodic behavioral changes monthly due to their monthly menstrual cycle, hormones change, so they are definitely into behavioral stress month on month. So thanks to you, sir. And I would like to just add some few points. And as you said, the GDP for health as such is pretty low. They try to improve it in this budget and by reducing the other factors of behavioral health. Yes, rightly pointed out, sir. So, and I want to emphasize on the standards of care for children and youth mental health is one, and we have to have credential, licensure, and core training requirements and accreditation requirements for this kind of behavioral health in the near future, and local traditional healing and helping practices, which is evidence based, can be practiced in supporting children in the school level itself. And we should have counselors, then we should have psychologists, then comes the psychiatrist. So we should have counseling done in the school level, and youth needs to be counseled at a and in the hospital level we should have psychologists who can you can help the neuro assessment and neuro analysis, as sir said. Then comes the psychiatrist where treatment can be given for the right diagnosis. So over to you as an head of the unit. And Dr. Nagesh, what is enabling us for the private hospitals not to have such an infrastructure? We all recommend these kind of patients to a government setup where they have admission right. Private setup as such don't have admission right for psychiatric patients. So over to you. What are your thoughts on this, and how can we go about in the next 10 years for future?
Thanks, Mervyn. I would like to start with a small incident which has happened in one of our hospital in the last May 2020. So when there was a lockdown, we suddenly started having a surge of patients. We were actually a non-COVID center. We had a surge of patients of substance abuse. That's alcohol. I'm sure everyone in our country knows that, those 3 months there was no alcohol which was available, and people were literally getting into withdrawal syndromes, and so we had around 7 8 patients at a go, and all of them were given they were accommodated into the rooms, because we don't want to take them into the ICU, where again the ICU psychosis can actually worsen the condition. So when we put them into the rooms, our rooms are not really meant for these kind of a people. The moment we put them, we give them some medications, we calm them up, and they are okay. But the problem, the time that they started having this withdrawal, they broke TVs, they broke glasses. Some tried to commit suicide themselves by breaking the bottle, and then so it was a hell lot of a kind of, it's like an insight for us which was not even thought of. We never thought about it. And so the infrastructure point of view, I think whatever that we created is definitely not suitable for any kind of abnormal behavior, people suffering with abnormal behaviors, or any kind of a mental health disturbances. So any, as you rightly said, the private hospitals or healthcare providers, as on today, the infrastructure which is created by them is definitely not adequate or not enough to address the mental health people, to accommodate people who are with mental health abnormalities or behavioral abnormal patterns. Now, it is just one side of the behavioral health what we are talking about, that is about the substance abuse. Now, are paramedics, are they really trained enough to understand what they are going through? A substance abuse guy behaves in a 3 different patterns in 24 hours. Now, are these girls do really understand what to do when this guy gets aggressive? What to do, how to calm them up, how to actually console the family members? Because the wife sitting right next to the husband who is actually trying to commit suicide by behaving very abnormally because of this withdrawal, do they know how to console the wife and say, look, this is expected? I think all that I'm sorry to say this, all that we understand, or our people understand, is to tie the hands, tie the legs, take the consent for restraints, and then say he is aggressive, he's getting aggressive, so we would like to bring him under control by using some medication. So meanwhile, we want to apply these restraints. But is that all? Is that all about handling someone who is behaving abnormally? Now, our infrastructure is not prepared, our people are not prepared, and we have a surge where you cannot just refer them to government hospitals because there are no other facilities who can actually take care of them. You rightly said, in the regular scenario, when we get these kind of patients, we say, please go to a psychiatric hospital run by government, or whatever center that it is nominated by the government. Now, I think the change should start from us, and I mean to say, the private healthcare should start thinking how friendly can we be for this kind of segment of population who require this kind of services. Someone with MI will also undergo some sort of a stress element which needs to be addressed. Someone with stroke undergoes lots and lots of, he doesn't know what's going to happen to him, what is his outcome is going to be. His all his siblings are worried, his father, mother, wife, everyone is worried, his kids are worried. And do we really take care of the other segment of family who are actually going through lots of stress? And if you think on the productivity lines, all of them are actually, their productivity will go down because of the stress. So in other ways, it's a cycle where it is all interlinked, interconnected. And as a healthcare provider, our role is to address all these stress related issues with the person who is admitted, and with the people who are actually associated with them directly. So I think the private healthcare, or the whatever, say, corporate healthcare providers in the country have to start thinking to create the infrastructure to handle anyone who is abnormal, who is behaving abnormally, anyone who is mentally not okay, someone who is disturbed psychologically is disturbed, So I think the infrastructure should be in place, right? A good infrastructure which can actually address these concerns should be in place. Then comes to the manpower right from, so during the same incident we had an issue. So when this guy was, he broke the TV and then he was trying to get aggressive with the people on ground. None of our housekeepers per se or the security personnel could understand what is happening. Try to access, go, talk to him, stop him, because these are all surprised. They are all surprised to understand what is happening. So I think creating infrastructure is one, and the number two is please gear up your people to understand first what is the behavioral abnormality or the mental health abnormality, and how do we deal with them. We need to be empathetic towards them. We need to understand their concerns. We don't have, I mean, if someone is aggressive, being aggressive with them back is not the solution. We need to make these people understand this is a way people are expected to behave because of some issue. It could be substance abuse, it could be a stress disorder, or it could be a psychiatric illness. But yes, we as a healthcare provider, I think preparation from our side is going to play a very, very important role by all means. And I think I think as Mr. Manoj clearly said, we just have we can't wait for the governments to do everything for us. I think we as a citizen of India we are also responsible, and we as a healthcare providers are, we have the responsibility on our shoulders to execute the proper right infrastructure and the training for the people involved in the first frontline, whoever the frontline warriors that take care of these bedside care for these patients. I think all of them need to be educated, trained, and they should be skilled enough to handle this kind of emergencies or abnormal patterns that we come across, rather than just referring them to another government hospital or publicly run hospital or any other psychiatric based hospital, which can actually make things worsen. Majority of these people who are referred, let me just share my own experience. Majority of these people who have been referred to take them to the government hospital or a psychiatric hospital, they don't even go till that stage. They go back home and then they just continue with the same kind of pattern that they've been going on with at home. And one fine day, they say it is out of our hands, so we need to go. So now referring them to a psychiatric hospital or a government hospital just because you're not ready, you're not prepared, you don't have that infrastructure, is actually you're trying to prolong the disease process, you're trying to prolong the abnormal patterns, and you're trying to affect the outcomes of this abnormal pattern. So now I submit to you and the other panelists as well as the audience. I think the private hospitals in this country should start looking at behavioral health as a very critical item, and our infrastructure and our manpower should be well prepared to handle any kind of behavioral abnormality patterns that we come across.
Thank you. Well said, Dr. Nagesh, and I really appreciate the fact that we are gearing up and we should gear up and move ahead. And for the final comments of Mr. Manoj Kumar, sir, so are the real psychiatric hospitals and the asylums or stress buster treatment therapy, are they really geared up to handle the behavioral health issues in the government setup itself? Your comments on that, and we can end up and we can move to the audiences, and we'll end up the closing session, sir. So are the government sector hospitals are real geared up to handle these kind of patients?
See, as I said in the beginning itself, that though these acts and policies has come up and they have confined themselves only to the government setup of central government as well as the state government, unless and until they have a part, as we say, the public-private partnership, they bring into the forum the private hospitals as well. They have a common program between the government hospitals and the private hospitals together as a public-private partnership. Things will not work out in this country. The government may have the money, but they do not have the wherewithal to take care of the entire populations who are suffering from behavioral and mental health conditions. Not possible for the government because of their, they have given the money, but where is the training that they have imparted to the social health workers? They have not imparted those training. Neither has the Anganwadi workers at the grassroots level, neither has the social health workers, the MPHWs. None of them have been trained carefully. If we go down to the villages, having worked extensively into the community sectors, I have understood that these people are not so well trained. They are given a very small little verbal training through the government and then put into the community to take care of these issues. Not possible. Yes, the money is being allotted, but the training has still not started at that level, at that intensity, for them to take over the entire mental health issues and the behavioral health issues of this particular country with such a huge population. So it is arguably the most important thing, that what Dr. Nagesh has also pointed out, that we need to bring in the private hospitals into the gambit of these entire operations of tackling behavioral health and mental health. The infrastructure, again, as I said, only two hospitals, that is one in Ranchi and the second one in Tejpur, which is considered the two biggest mental hospitals in the country, has been allotted with a mere amount of 3 crores to uplift their entire infrastructure. Not possible. Just 3 crores will not do. So we need to set up more amount of hospitals with a better infrastructure and trained manpower to ensure that we can tackle these kind of issues in the country. We need to have the private hospitals also, and earmarked private hospitals with the area and infrastructure and sorry, and trained manpower to tackle these issues. Just keeping it confined to the district hospitals, area hospitals, and the central hospitals will not suffice. So my submission is that the government must understand that bringing along policies and acts and allotting money will not help. It needs to bring in the masses, the trained manpower, the other private hospitals, the trained doctors, psychoanalysts, and psychotherapists into this particular gambit, and then ensure that these people, there are different sectors. One is to understand what is going around, talk to the family members, one set of people to have taken care of only the patients which come in, one set of people who are further trained to ensure that the treatment given is proper. So we need to have segments of people, a different level of expertise and training to tackle this kind of scenario, not alone by the government. The infrastructure is also very poor at the moment. We need to build up the infrastructure across the states and districts. Only then can we tackle this situation. As it is growing day by day, as the population is increasing, we understand there is a lot of peer pressure. There is a lot of parent pressure on the children. There is a lot of peer pressure for the individuals at the work front. I am surprised to know that about 45% people in the corporate sector are undergoing stress. It's a study that has been carried out. And in the study, it has been revealed that 45% of people working in the corporate sector undergo some kind of a mental illness. They undergo some kind of a stress. It could be because of the work environment. It could be because of the target-driven professionals, all of this. So there has to be an understanding across. There has to be trained manpower. Segments has to be divided. Infrastructure has to be built up. And then only can we tackle the situation. Others, it is going to boomerang at any point of time. We are just seeing the tip of the iceberg. It can come up at any point of time, and then we won't know how to handle this. So this is the right time. With the pandemic, it has given us an insight as to how much of a problem this can create. So it is time for us to take cognizance of these facts and start working on a war footing to ensure that all health workers, whether private or public, is taken into this forum and made to work for this particular area of behavioral and mental health.
Thank you, sir. Well said. And my final comment would be: see, we were having 3, 4 speakers, but within only 2 speakers, we could gain so much of knowledge and wisdom for behavioral health. And I did some research as well. What is behavioral health all about? And I took my own example. I was heading 2 units at Hyderabad, so I had to come back to my clinical role to get the shear pressure down from my angle. Then again step up the ladder. So that's one way to look at it. And I did have some stress, so I had to step down and take my clinical activities as well. So if any family member or any peer is facing stress, depression, anxiety, relationship problems, grief, addiction, learning disabilities for children, mood disorders, and other psychological concerns, if they have, please kindly seek help. And this platform is mainly to tell you where and how to go about this kind of health issues. And this behavioral problem itself is an health issue. In medicine book, psychiatry is a very small topic in Harrison's and in Davidson, which we went through. But community medicine talks about health and mental health. So community based program needs to be implicated, and we should definitely go in for audits in the community where we can help them to bring up the community to a certain extent. And over to you, Mr. Vikram, and the audiences for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mervyn Leo, for moderating the session, and thank you, Mr. Bose and Nagesh sir, for being the panelists and taking out time. It was wonderful seeing you all in the panel. And before we wrap up, we would like to present a small token of gratitude from our side, sir. May I request? Yeah. Thank you, Wing Commander Manoj Kumar Bose. Sir, thank you very much for joining in, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mervyn Leo. Thank you for moderating the session.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Nagesh K. Rao. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
We hope to see you again, sir. Bye.
And this session was a very interactive session.
It was indeed, sir. It was a very insightful session, sir. Yes.
Yes. Any questions from the audience?
No, sir. There are no questions as of now, sir.
Okay, thank you, panelists.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining EHEALS, and thanks EL for giving us this opportunity on behalf of the panelists and the moderator as a moderator. So
Pleasure,
keep
sir.
continuing the good work, and we'll hope to meet soon. Thank you.
Sure,
Good
sir.
day.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.